say?
When a person's out there in a tent or under a bridge or someplace, even snuck in or gone somewhere where they shouldn't have been and not realizing that they shouldn't have been where they're at the moment, it tends to, for lack of a word, almost break a person. And it's as though they, if you look at their face, they even sense that they look some sort of broken. And it's almost as though they continue as far as that, hey, they don't belong, or hey, they, you know, I was out there in the woods all night and no one came to check on me.
Right.
And
The sense of hope is gone. Is that what you're feeling when you're in that situation?
I wouldn't say that. I would say more or less that the sense of belonging. That when there's nobody around, and it just becomes very desolate. Life becomes very dull to a point where it's a struggle just to stay alive, because there's really nobody around there to, as far as who's there to
Sure.
reach out a hand,
Right.
to say, hey, there's somebody out here who does care.
Right. Right.
And that, you know what, when there's too much of that happening in life, that can send a person in a place where no one should be.
Right.
Especially in this society where we stay in, that
Yeah.
it was just become, well, just because a person is riding a bicycle,
Right.
well, that doesn't mean that person is not intelligent. That doesn't mean that person is not special. That doesn't mean that person is, just because they're riding a bicycle,
That's right.
that they fall into a lower category than anybody else.
That's right. That's right.
It basically means is that get to know that person. Why don't you stop by, instead of riding by? I'm not sending out a message as far as what people do, but just because of all the different violence in this world, all the different thought process that a lot of things happen. Oh, well, this happened last week, so when we drive by this area, let's lock our doors and
Right.
roll up our windows because of X, Y, Z.
Tell me a little bit about. I hear
You know what I'm
stories.
saying?
Yeah, I mean, I hear stories about people living in the woods at fear because for their safety, because there's a lot of violence against homeless people. Women have to stay up at night. Well,
Absolutely.
tell me a little bit about
What would you like to tell?
whatever you want, whatever your experiences are. Just
Well, you want to tell your experience, Roger, or I'll tell mine?
Well, go ahead. You're better at it than I am. But I've noticed people judge you for what you have done, but not for who you are. You know what I mean?
well, what actually happened? So tell me, like, give me an example, a story
I'll
of.
give some people a brief as far as what's actually like to be in a tent. First of all, when you get a tent, it's pretty scary, because by me growing up, I was never in a tent as my teenage years. I mean, I played football and things like that, but and the whole reality.
You grew up here in New Jersey?
Yeah, I bounced around New Jersey and New
Right.
York and different areas. But the process is that when a person, when it seems like a person is not opening the door, and all of a sudden you go into a store and say, oh, okay, here's these tents, maybe this will work. And so once you get the tent and you set it up and night falls and you're in that tent alone, reality starts setting in. The safety factor, as far as, you know what's really going to happen out here, because you're all alone in a tent, and the tent is it's not made out of wood, it's made out of material, which
Right.
a good windstorm and can knock a tree down and crush a person, can rip the tent apart. And so the safety issue is there, because there's no stability in that tent. The tent is very small, it's very tight, there's no toilet in there,
Yeah.
there's no running water in there. And so you're against basically every element possible, from the animals to the weather to getting sick to the risk of someone actually coming in, and who knows what's going to happen. I'll share a story with you. When I was in a tent, I was in Cedar Knolls, New Jersey, and I found a place which is secluded, but yet to my understanding it really wasn't. And so what happened was, not to scare anybody,
That's all right.
I got into the tent and I started hearing these footsteps. It was in October. And when you're in a tent, you're very alert. Your ears, your senses, everything gets heightened to a point where I started hearing some footsteps, and here I am in a tent. Very easily, someone could knock a person out inside of a tent.
Right.
I'm talking for people across the board, as far as who are in a tent, who possibly
Sure.
can relate.
Right.
That there's really not much area you can go to defend yourself, because you're in a 4x4x4 tent. And so what I did was, I basically heard some footsteps. I got out of that tent as quick as possible and got into an area which was open in order to see what kind of who was what and who it was, only to find out that whatever it was was gone. But just send a word out there to people who are comfortable on their couches and watching their TVs and able to go into the refrigerator and get a cold drink. There's people out there who just don't have those options.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
and you know what? It's that really isn't how it should be.
Yeah.